Batman Forever was outpaced at the box office this weekend by Apollo 13, but in only 2 weeks of release, it has earned $141 million. Critics have taken shot at Batman and at the extraordinary marketing campaign executed by Warner Brothers, but audiences have spoken louder. Joel Schumacher, whose credits include St. Elmo's Fire and The Client, compares shooting a Batman movie to climbing Mount Everest. I'm pleased to have him back on this broadcast. Welcome.
Thank you, Charles. Great to see you.
Great to see you. Why is it like climbing Mount Everest to make a Batman movie?
Well, you know, the funny thing is, when you're a success, which, as you know, you've known me a long time, and I've been lucky that my films have found audiences, it looks so easy in hindsight. But at the beginning of this, I was the new director on the Batman franchise. I changed Batman to Val Kilmer. We didn't know if the audience... We didn't know if people wanted another Batman. And it also is a very complex movie logistically and an adventure. So it's like Mount Everest because you can fall and die at any second. Yeah. Not as cold, though.
You get a call from Terry Semel or Bob Daly or somebody like that at Warner Brothers.
Yes.
Two guys who run Warner Brothers.
The brothers.
You're on location shooting
Starting to
Client.
shoot The Client.
Yeah. So that hasn't even been out, which was a big success for you. Falling Down was out and other things. They call you up and say, we're going to give you...
They called me, brought me in to L.A., sat me down at breakfast and said, we'd like to offer you the corporation's largest asset. Quote, end quote.
And you knew what they were talking about.
I had heard through the grapevine, through the other executives at Warner's, that they were going to offer me the next Batman movie.
And you said what?
Well, I made a joke. I said, oh, you're going to give me Mel Gibson. I'll rent him out as a gynecologist in Beverly Hills, and I'll make enough money to buy Time Warner. Then I said, well, I'll do it if Tim Burton wants me to do it, because we're friends, and I would have not done it if Tim had said, no, I don't want you to direct it.
Right.
And basically said yes. So I went to see Tim, and he did want me to do it. I think Tim was anxious not to do another Batman movie.
It is said that they said, we want it lighter and brighter. We want it different than the second Batman.
They didn't say lighter and brighter. What they said is, we want you to do it, and we want to do it your way, and are you interested in this? And do you think you can have some fun with it? But I didn't have a list of directives.
Okay. You wanted Robin Williams.
Yes, I called Robin and said, play the Riddler. And he said, I'd love to. And then a year went by, and he was still saying, I'd love to, Joel, but he couldn't say yes. So by that time I had met with Jim Carrey, and I felt that there must be a reason Robin, I think somebody as brilliant and wonderful, Robin is one of the great people, as you know. And I thought, if a year goes by and a great artist isn't saying yes, there's a reason. Either it's me or the project or the part, there's a reason. Yeah. So I think sometimes...
It's better.
Yeah.
Okay. Mike Keaton said, I pass. Or something else.
Not so.
Not so.
Absolutely not so.
What happened?
Well, I have to be extremely elegant about this, Charles.
Okay.
And following such a noble politician, I must be political. At some point, Michael Keaton and Warner Brothers decided to part company. And they shook hands and walked away from each other. I was not in the room when this happened, so I can't give you the blow-by-blow. But at that time, Terry Semel and Bob Daly called me and said, have you ever thought of anybody else for this role?
You said?
Val Kilmer.
Because?
Oh, I saw Val. Well, I'd been a fan of Val's for a long time, had interviewed Val for a role a couple of years ago, which I ultimately gave to someone else in a movie that didn't get made. But I had been a fan of Val's for a long time. And in Christmas of '93, I was offered this in summer of '93. Christmas of '93, I saw him in Tombstone, and I thought, Val would make a great Batman. And so I never expected to make the movie without Michael Keaton, though.
But in a sense, it freed you.
It gave me real license then to do my own comic book.
To be more creative and do it the way you wanted to do it.
I would hope I would be creative with Michael Keaton also.
Of course,
but with Val, once you have a new center to your project, to the film, it is a new film. And I was able then to not have to really be guided by the past.
Okay. The reason I'm going through this with you, casting, because you are considered a master caster. That's one of the great skills. So you look at St. Elmo's. You were able to pick people Julia Roberts, and
No,
others.
she came in Flatliners.
Flatland, right.
And Lost Boys. I know the series of films you're going to mention, which is St. Elmo's Fire and Lost Boys and Flatliners. And
you picked a lot of people who went on to ski for Sullivan and others that went on to become big stars.
I think you would have chosen them too. I think I'm a lucky caster because I think that when I met Demi, Andy McDowell, Kiefer, Jason Patrick, Julia Roberts, Billy Baldwin, you know, on and on. If you had been casting my films and you saw 200 actors or actresses,
they would have stood out.
And they walked in, you would have said, thank God they walked in my office.
Oh, you make it sound much easier, though. Oh, come on. I think it's probably a much more difficult choice, and a lot of directors have been here and said, casting is 75% of what I do.
I'd say 90.
You say 90?
I say 90.
Then if that's true, then if casting was easy, a lot of people would make bigger and better movies than they do.
Well, all of us, if you read our critics, all of us are not considered qualified at what we do anyway, so perhaps some of the people who have my title aren't good casters.
Well, we may even get to that before this conversation is over. But let's just stay with casting. Nicole Kidman.
Yes.
Obvious for you, first choice, because...
I've been in love with Nicole since Dead Calm, which she did when she was, I think, yes, she was about 18. And, you know...
Tall, statue. Is she tall?
Oh, gorgeous, yes. Yeah. Tall, beautiful, and a brilliant actress. And I think that the combination of... She's done this wonderful movie with Gus Van Sant called To Die For, which if you haven't seen, you've got to see it. And Batman Forever. And now she's doing a wonderful movie with Jane Campion, Portrait of a Lady.
Who made Piano, right.
Yeah, the Henry Miller. I think people will start to realize...
How good she is.
Well, she's also so extraordinarily young. You know, she's been around...
20, what, 3, 4, something like
that? No, she's about... I would say about 27, 28.
Okay.
Old, over the hill.
No, I don't think so.
Over the hill.
Tommy Lee
Jones, yes.
Who you worked with on the client.
I worked with on the client.
Did you insist that he be included, or was that your...
He was the first person...
You chose.
That I asked, yes. Because Harvey Two-Face, which he plays so incredibly, is half district attorney, half Phantom of the Opera. And, of course, who else would you ever think of but Tommy Lee Jones for this?
Batman has been known for people delivering really extraordinary performances, even if they weren't the star, even if they weren't Batman.
Yes.
Nicholson and Pfeiffer and others. Does that title belong to Jim Carrey in this movie? Does he, in a way, steal this film because of his performance as a Riddler?
Well, Chris O'Donnell has become a major force in our business, playing Robin. I think Val and Nicole and Chris, it has almost appeared to me as they've been discovered in this movie, which is extraordinary since they've all done 10 years of great work, even though they're still quite young. Tommy is acknowledged as one of our greatest character actors. I think it depends on who you're talking to, who steals the movie. However, knowing Jim, working with Jim, and loving Jim as I do, it's pretty hard for him not to steal a scene because he is a tour de force all the time.
Meaning?
I've never known anybody like him. He acts with every pore of his body. He is just an extraordinary young man. He's the most dedicated, the most professional. He works all night long before he does a scene. He practices in front of a mirror. His facial expressions. He worked with a cane expert on his cane in the movie and a hat expert. And there is no stunt person for Jim in the movie. When he blows up the Batcave, that's all him. He worked with the pyrotechnic wizards and did all of it himself because, of course, nobody can imitate his body language. Although I think Tommy Lee Jones is a great scene stealer, too. Part of the fun of it is watching the two of them together.
You brought it in ahead of schedule, under budget.
Mm-hmm.
What did it cost?
$78 million.
And they spent about $20 million promoting it.
That I don't know. That figure you have to get from Rob Friedman at Warner's. That's not my budget.
You, who've come a long way from growing up in Queens, the only child of a single parent.
Right.
Father had died earlier.
Right. Father died when I was 4.
What does it mean to you, this movie, this huge box office success? After all you have been through, and you live to be a good director?
Well, of course, I did grow up poor. I was on the street as a young kid. I have made every mistake in the book, and I left home when I was way too young. I'm one of those people who is a true survivor of the 60s. I mean, I'm blessed just to be alive, all right?
Drugs
and sex and rock and roll.
Right.
And way beyond the time period that I should have stopped. And so there's that. Then I wanted to be a movie director since I was 7 years old because I grew up behind a movie theater in Queens, in Long Island City, and this is what I wanted to do with my life. I not only have gotten it, I've gotten it bigger than I ever dreamed. So it's humbling. Yeah, I mean, it really is humbling. I never expected Batman. I mean, I just hoped we would be, you know, accepted well and people would have a good time. It was created for people to have fun at the movies. The fact that they are is really thrilling. Not for the money. It really isn't about the money. It doesn't go in my pocket anyway. It belongs to Warner Brothers, who funded it, and it should.
Yeah, some of it does, though. Come on.
No, I'm not a gross player.
Not at all.
No, there are no gross players.
You took a straight salary on this and bam.
Yes. Sometimes when you read how overpaid we are, it's because they want to keep us away from the cash register. That's okay. Most of us are overpaid and overpaid. What's fabulous to me about all my movies, having found audiences, is that that's why I made them. They don't exist unless people go to the movies and see them. Maybe they get, now with cable and with video, maybe they get discovered in some alternative reality. But a movie that's in a movie theater that runs at 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10, and there's no one in the audience when that movie runs, what's the point, you know?
Falling down, the client, Batman. I mean, who do you want to look to and say, I did it, I did it. I achieved those things that you had confidence. For example, there is a story that when you were designing costumes for Woody Allen, he encouraged you to believe and embrace the idea that you could become a director.
Yes. He's still one of my greatest supporters and fans. But the person that I have the most trouble with getting approval from is myself.
Why?
Well, because I fall short of, you know, when I see great films, you know, I'm inspired. I don't think that I'm great. I'm struggling to be good. I want to be better. I take on a new film each year and try to be better than I was the year before.
You said a fascinating thing to me. You said at one point, you know, it is very hard to believe you have a calling and then realize you're not gifted.
Yes, I wanted to be a director all my life. When I finally got the chance to direct, I was so miserably untalented that...
This is a Lily Tomlin thing, or something?
Yeah, my first feature was Incredible Shrinking Woman, and I wasn't happy with my work at all. And
all of a sudden you felt like, my God, I've got a chance and I don't have what it...
I didn't know what to do with my life then. I thought I should leave. You know, a friend of mine, a mutual friend of ours, who shall remain nameless, called me. He's very successful in the entertainment business. And he called me after he saw the client, and he said, Joel, you've really become a good director. And I said, you know, I only had two choices. I had to, because I either had to leave the business or get better, because I disappointed myself so much. But I still do, because, you know, the vision that anyone has when you want to create something is pure. And then when you start to do it, it becomes very real. And in the reality of it, sometimes it falls short a little bit of the dream. Although many parts of Batman Forever, for instance, are surprising, because once that cast got together, they created an energy that was greater than any single choice I had made. And 1,000 people worked on Batman Forever. So whatever success it's received and whatever good words people have said about it, I accept those on behalf of the 1,000 people that worked on it.
All right, take a look at this. Batman Forever, this is where Batman crashes the party, and you'll see most of the characters. Here it is, directed by Joel Schumacher.
Sir, I could be fired for this, sir. Perhaps they'll have me back at Buckingham Palace.
Here is what some critics have said when they see this. stylish, more style than substance. It looks like a series of trailers. There's no story, they say. You say, you may be right, but the audiences love it, or do you say what?
Well, first of all, I don't know who we're speaking of, so I would have to know which critics are speaking of, and I have to tell you what my opinion is of their...
Okay, well, take a look at this. This is a clip from a show I did.
Okay,
all right,
great.
Take a look at this.
Oh, good. I haven't seen this.
Here is David Denby of New York Magazine on this program.
We don't all enjoy being at odds with public taste all that much. I'd much rather be at one with public taste. I thought it was really a disgraceful movie, a mess, very badly made, and it's a culmination of trends that have been gathering force for a long time. And the most important one is the shredding of any sense of what a story is anymore, or what geography is, where people are in relation to one another. This thing looks like, to me, looks like a gigantic trailer. Just jumps from climax to climax, from explosion to explosion, from villain to hero. Everything's been doubled up.
There you go.
Well, it's sad when life has changed so much and some people live in a time, in a place, in an anachronism within themselves. It's hard for a deracinated East Coast critic to really understand what entertainment is for the rest of the planet. I don't know what David is comparing it to. Potemkin, I mean, this is a Batman comic book. I think there's a very strong story in this. It introduces the Robin character. There's a love story with Val. They have two great villains in this movie and a lot of fun. I'm sorry that he can't see, I'm sorry that all of the hard work and energy, the beautiful sets, the costumes, the jokes, the choreography disturbs him so much. I'm sorry that he finds our film disgraceful. However, I can't agree with him.
What is it you think filmmakers know that many critics don't know about making movies and about audiences?
I think that one of the problems, because this happens with some executives and filmmakers also, most movie critics are watching movies before they come out in private screening rooms. Also, there's a fixed idea, I think, about what a standard of film should be, which, and I don't know what it comes from. In other words, I don't know who developed it or when it is, but I think for a lot of people, there is a serious revolution going on. You know, there have been three, from my point of view, three humbling revolutions to the soul of humankind, which is when Copernicus announced that the Earth was not the center of the universe,
yes.
When Darwin announced that we're descended from monkeys, and when Freud finally announced that even our mind isn't our own, we don't quite know what's going on. I think that there's another one going on, which is that, unfortunately, or fortunately in this case, the center of the critical universe is not in New York City, and it's not with a few critics that write for extremely rarefied, deracinated sometimes.
Deracinated.
Yes. Publications that the snob in people, you know. I think that this also, I think that what Mr. Denby is expressing here is a fear. The world is changing very, very rapidly, as you were discussing with your formidable guest before me. I saw a wonderful interview with Jim Carrey where the interviewer said, well, aren't you worried that your films are just lightweight comedies and that you're not, there's no depth? And Jim said, hey man, I'm just trying to give them some relief out there. If you want to teach them something, you go ahead. Batman is a comic book. It's supposed to be a comic book. It was created in 1939 to be a comic book. We made a living comic book. That's what it's supposed to be. Also, being a pop culture sponge myself, my only claim to fame, what I've really noticed is that I try to put many, many levels in my films, and some people just don't get them. If you had Peter Travers here from Rolling Stone, he gets Batman totally. Sometimes people just don't get the joke, and I feel sorry for them.
I have had Pete Travers here. I just should say also that David had the most extreme reaction to that. Janet Maslin was less so. Thought there were other movies that she sort of was kind of neutral, although
also,
a
what
bit
you told me
negative
is
on it.
that...
And
that,
Stephen Schiff also
yes.
was on that group, but I have other critics who have seen it and had different opinions.
Right.
Oh, go ahead. You were going to say.
Well, also, what you told me was David Denby approached you and asked to be on this show so he could attack
He
you.
did. That's a true story. David
he said,
came
put
to me
on your show so I can attack Batman forever.
No, he didn't say quite that. But basically
Sort of.
what David said to me, I saw him at a lunch, and he said, I feel strongly about Batman. You ought to do a show about Batman, you know, because I think it represents something that's taken over the movie business, is basically what he said. And I said, sounds like an interesting idea. David is a long-standing critic of good reputation here, writes for New York Magazine. And so we also had Janet Maslin of the New York Times, who I'm sure you like, and Stephen Schiff, who's written and is now, in fact, a screenwriter himself, as you know. And so we brought them together. That's the point here. I don't want to make this larger than it was, but it is, in fact, a hugely successful film.
Yes.
And
so we could say, since the movie's approaching $150 million, but let's not talk about the money. Let's talk about the people that represents.
yeah.
So let's figure at $5 a ticket, because not every theater charges $8, not every,
7,
some
right.
have matinees. And so let's say $5 a ticket. That's 30 million people
Right.
have seen this movie. So are we to then think that the 30 million people that have gone, and some of them 2 and 3 times, are wrong and David Denby is right? That somehow he has discovered the fatal flaw in the American public. Also, don't you think people really get tired of critics telling them how stupid they are about what they like? Do you remember last year at this time when Forrest Gump was the rage?
Yeah.
And there were endless editorials and people discussing on television how this was promoting stupidity in the country?
I do remember that, but let me tell you what I think in the end. I think that it is the role of directors to go out and make the film that they want to make to the best of their ability.
Yes,
to
that's
get
all
the
we
best
can
crews,
do.
use the best techniques,
Right.
you know, come in under budget, on schedule, and deliver it to America. Right. And it is the role of critics to sit there and say, and bring together whatever their experience is and their ability to communicate and say, this is what I thought. You know, and
Absolutely.
and the American public will make up its mind based on marketing, based on, in a few, what critics say, obviously not a lot, and based on their affection for the character. You are making movies, The Client being one, and the new one, what's the new one?
A Time to Kill.
A Time to Kill, written by John Grisham.
Right.
People will go to those movies not because you're directing them, because they're movies about books by John Grisham, because they love John Grisham, correct?
Some
so
people
a lot
do,
of things sell
and
movies.
some critics don't.
Exactly. And
You
some
know,
people
some
don't
critics...
like Grisham books, and therefore
That's
they won't
right.
go to a Grisham movie.
Exactly.
You know, so sometimes it's beyond. It just seems to me that I don't want this to become a conversation between a director, although I think it's a good idea. And a great show for me would be to have you here, and one critic here, and one critic here, and just talk about the business of making movies and hear what they say. I mean,
Yes,
each has its own role.
Well, you know, when we work in the Hollywood system, you know, there are certain requirements and limitations and privileges that we have. As you mentioned, it costs the same amount of money to advertise an expensive movie as an inexpensive movie, so there are pressures put upon us. Now, the answer to that is yes, you can go off and do independent films, but if you've grown up in the Hollywood system and you've made your way, which I did, I started as a $200 a week costume designer and worked my way up in the Hollywood system, I'm a product of it. There's a menu out there. The great thing about film is that there are Big Macs, there are little Polish restaurants, there's Thai food, and you know, and they don't all have to be compared to one another.
Right.
Sometimes a great Big Mac is just wonderful. And I think that we lose sight of that sometimes, because all film cannot be compared to all film. There are too many boutiques now.
Yeah. And Steven Spielberg can make, on the one hand, Schindler's List, and on the other hand, a film which has a huge, huge audience.
Yes.
Like, take any one of the number of films that he's made, you know, Jurassic Park.
I know,
which
but did I
had
miss
a zillion
something?
people.
Did I miss something? Is making a movie and then a lot of people go to see it become when did this become not the point of it all? I mean, you know, we make films with other people's money, most of
Right.
us. We're funded by banks, which are the studios.
Right.
I mean, so is the concept of bringing people into the theater to see the movie, has this become an ugly thing in our
who
culture?
said it has?
Well,
it is the system out
I'm
there.
just having some fun with this.
But
you
with
know.
David, but it's the system out there that says, you know, we're making movies to make money because we are in a profit-making business. On the other hand, you expect more from some kinds of films.
Absolutely.
Warner Brothers does not. I assume are they making A Time to Kill? Is that a
Yes.
Warner Brothers film?
Yes.
They're not expecting to get the same kind of return.
Oh, on Batman
from
Forever.
Batman, of course not.
Nor would we make it on the same level.
You know, so you make different movies for different purposes, and some demand different kinds of artistry. One may
Absolutely.
be very well about the kind of pyrotechnics that you had in
Yes.
Batman.
But there's a lot more going on than pyrotechnics.
There's a story, and there are characters, and
But it
there's
is a pop
reaction.
culture opera, and
Right.
it deserves
a pop
to be
culture opera.
Yes, and it deserves to be a pop culture opera. And if it failed, it would fail as that.
And if they come to you and say, Batman Forever was so great, we now want you to make Batman 4, you're going
Right.
to say, I'm your guy.
Oh, I don't know about that yet. I just got through. I just got through this one, and now I have to start the Grisham book. But also, the same publications
Yeah.
that have critics sometimes who slam us because the films are successful also review us by our box office. Can
Sure
you
they do.
imagine if I had made a Batman movie that didn't succeed at the box office? There now would be endless criticism. It would be a flop.
Yeah,
It would be
and-
considered a flop. There would be articles written, why did it flop? There would be an analysis of it. I would be criticized on the basis of the box office, and you know that. So you can't have it both ways.
Congratulations.
Thanks, Charles. It's great to see you.
Joel Schumacher, Batman is the movie. Coming up, we will talk about, you'll be interested in this, we'll talk about Forbes magazine and who they have figured out are the world's 10 richest people. William Gates, Warren Buffett, 2 Americans, and then a lot of other people on the list of the 10.
And there's your photo, Charles, right
yes,
there.
a billionaire wannabe.
Right.
Thank you, Joel. Great to have you here.
Thanks, Charlie.
We'll be
I
right
appreciate
back.
it.
Stay with us.